Hey, Coach, when it comes to ball security, is there anything you can do besides emphasizing in practice, drilling it? Is there anything else that might help it translate?
No, it's specific drill work. It's how we do it in practice. It's the fundamentals. You know, for us, the key word is chin. We want the nose of the ball under the chin. It's showing them examples. You know, one of the things that we've done as well is go back and look at trends. So of all the fumbles that we've had by specific players, when have they got themselves into trouble, and being able to show them that. No different than you show them positive plays to try to model positive behaviors. Show the negative ones to see if there's any trends there of why it's happening. So, for the most part, we've done a pretty good job of that.
James, we've seen how the targeting rule has impacted the secondary and kind of the coverage. How have you seen it affect tackling in general, especially like with linebackers? Have you seen anything there?
Yeah, I think we've talked before. You know, there's some that there's not a whole lot you can do. You know, you're going to get the penalty. We've had a lot of conversations with Cam because with being 6'6", it makes it challenging for him sometimes. I also see a lot more cut tackling where guys are going and cutting the guy's legs out rather than the old school wrap and things like that. But yeah, I think it's changed. It instead of just going and trusting your instincts, I think defenders are thinking a lot more right before contact and what they have to do to protect themselves and protect the player. So I think the rule has worked, but it is challenging at times. I don't think there's any doubt about it.
Hey, James, the week leading up to each game, except the last 2 weeks, you always tweeted out the opponent. Did I miss it, or have you stopped doing that?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think thank you. Yeah. There's sometimes that I control my Twitter account. There's other times that I don't. And I think I forgot one week, and I think somebody else forgot another week. So yeah. So I'll go back. I'll tweet them out. Yeah, exactly. That is accurate.
James, can you talk about the importance of New Jersey as a recruiting area for this program? It always traditionally has been. And does one game ever make a difference when you're playing a team in its home state and you recruit well there?
I don't think it is as big of an impact as people make it out to be. Obviously it always helps. Winning helps everything, but I don't know if it has as big of an impact as the narrative that's out there, if that makes sense. I think obviously whenever players can come to your stadium, families can come to your stadium and see the environment here, and you're successful, that helps. Whenever you're able to go on the road and you're in someone's backyard and they're at the game and you play well and you play an exciting brand of football, I think it helps. I don't know if it's as impactful as people think.
And can you speak to New Jersey just as a recruiting area? I know you dominate the state and everything, but it seems like a lot of kids come from that area.
Yeah, obviously it's in our footprint. If you look, Pennsylvania numbers have gone down a little bit, really over the last 30 years. New Jersey stayed fairly strong. It's going to be very, very important to us in our approach of this footprint, this region, of doing a really good job in this region. And then also, as you've seen, being willing to go a little bit more national. I think that is very, very important because back to the first point that I made about the numbers in the state of Pennsylvania have gone down over the last 30 years. You're not going to be able to sustain the level of recruiting that you're going to need year in and year out, only staying regionally and in the state. You're gonna have to do more of that. So, hopefully some years we'll be able to sign 10 to 15 guys out of the state. There's going to be other years where maybe 4 or 5. So I think all those things are important, and Jersey's obviously a big part of that.
Sorry.
It's okay.
You've had a lot of young guys play for you all year long. You saw some tough games, but how big of a, what would it do for their development if you guys were to have a positive closing structure in the final 2 regular season games and for the young players to develop?
Yeah, I think obviously whenever you can get guys experience in games, like Trent Gordon, for example, he's going to play this week. Now, how much does he play? I'm not sure, but I'd make the argument even if he plays 6 plays in the game, that's going to be valuable for him moving forward. That's where bowl games are so important. That's where programs that win consistently, they consistently gain an advantage. Programs that lose consistently, they lose that extra practice time, that extra developmental time that you have during bowl prep. So, I think it's very valuable.
James, you've mentioned in the past that if an underclassman is thinking about declaring early, usually you sit down, you have a talk, and if he's not going to go in the first round, you advise him to stay. But with the way the NFL game is changing, I'm just wondering if your take has changed at all in regards to running back specifically, since obviously it's hard to get drafted in the first round if you're not a Saquon Barkley, and with the way NFL teams look at treads and all that, is that you still feel the same way, or has your opinion changed at all with the way the NFL game has changed?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about Rutgers. I really don't want to talk about next year. I really don't want to talk about the NFL. I'd like to talk about Rutgers, but in general, I want to answer your question because you asked, but in general, most of the data says if you're going to be a first or second round draft choice, you got to strongly consider leaving. If not, most of the data says you should come back to school. So when the time is appropriate, we'll meet with all those guys and talk about all those things, and advise them the way I would advise my son, and have conversations with the parents as well. Not only has the NFL changed, but college has changed. You can insure players for loss of value now. You can insure players for disability. So there's a lot of things that have changed on both ends of the spectrum.
James, the last couple of times we've had a chance to talk to Miles since the game, it's like 75% of the time he's praising the offensive line. Can't say enough about them. We heard a lot of that from Saquon Barkley in the past. Do you think that's something that Miles picked up from Saquon in that room? And is that just Miles' natural inclination? Has always been, I don't want to talk about myself necessarily, I want to talk about other people?
Well, I think that's partly who they are. I think that's partly what we talk about in terms of, talking to our guys about how to deal with the media, how to praise others, just our approach in general in the greatest team sport there is. It's about everybody else. It's not about you. So I think that's a little bit who Miles and Saquon are. I think it's a little bit about what they've been coached to do by their position coaches and Coach Sider. I think it's a little bit about what I talk about after the game. Right after the game, I stand up, I say, praise the opponent, praise your teammates. Chris does the same thing as well. So it's a little bit of how they were raised, about who they are, and also, how we try to tell them to deal with these different situations.
James, you mentioned Trent is going to get some playing time. Any other guys who haven't really seen much of the field, do you expect to see the field?
No, I think. Yeah, I think the rest of them you guys are aware of. I think we talked a little bit early in the week about Shorter, Trent. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers the guys. I think there's a chance Rashid could get some time. So we'll see.
Have you been able to get pressure with 4 on defense like you were in that game at any other point? How much does that open up what Brent can do with defense?
Yeah, I think obviously whenever you're able to pressure the quarterback with your 4-down line, you got a chance to have a good defense. We've been able to do that at times. Overall, I think we're leading the conference in sacks. So I think we've shown flashes, but I think obviously when Brent doesn't have to call pressures to get it, that's when you're at your best. The best defenses in the country are able to do that. So yeah, there's no doubt about it. When you don't have to artificially create the rush, then obviously, as a play caller on the defensive side of the ball, you can play coverage, which is obviously going to help, especially if you can still pressure the quarterback. And then when you actually do mix your pressures in, they become even more impactful. So I don't think there's any doubt about it.
James, how do you think Will Levis is handled this year? What have you guys seen or heard that you've liked from what he's done in practice?
Yeah, he's very, very talented physically. Coach Galt talks about him all the time. He's one of our more explosive athletes that we have in our program. He's got a very strong arm. I think he's been frustrated by the redshirt process, like a lot of them are. I think he's also very, very type A and very much wants to make sure he's getting better every single day. And a lot of times when you're over there on the scout team and the card's drawn with the patterns and there's a circle around this guy says throw to this guy, sometimes as quarterback that's frustrating because you want to go through your progression, you want to read the defense, and that's not always the case. I think he likes when I come over there because no matter where the circle is, I tell him to go through these progressions based on what the defense is giving. And he doesn't get yelled at if he doesn't do that if I'm there. The other thing is a lot of times, the O-line has a hard time blocking the D-line, so it's hard to make the reads and go through the things you need to do because you got people standing all around you. So overall, the things that he can control, which is what we talk about all the time, he's doing an unbelievable job. There's things like that where he's in a role where he needs to give a great look for our defense, and that isn't always the best situation for him. I think he gets frustrated with that, but we've all been through that. I remember, my days doing that. But that's part of the the maturation process. That's part of kind of rites of passage.
James, how have you seen Ricky Ronnie grow as a play caller this season, and how have you seen him put his own footprint on the offense?
I think the thing that probably stands out to me is running the ball. I think we're running the ball better this year than we have in the previous 2 years. I also think in terms of with the running game as well, we have a lot less tackles for loss. Sometimes in the past we have a situation where you'd have a field pressure coming off the edge, and Saquon would get the ball. As soon as he was getting the ball, he was getting tackled. So we get less of that. So I think Ricky has done a really good job in the running game. We got to do a little bit more of a better job in the passing game. And I don't even know if that necessarily I'm saying that scheme, but that's all of it. We own all of it. We own the protection issues. We own the drops. We own all of it. That's through recruiting. That's through development. And that's through scheme. The things that I watch as a head coach, like in terms of when the ball snapped, did we call a play that had a chance to be successful or not? That's the first thing. And then after it, it's about execution, teaching fundamentals and techniques and things like that, and then putting our players in the best position to be successful from a scheme. Are we challenging the defense? Are we putting people in conflict and things like that? So I've been pleased. But obviously there's areas that we got to get better.
Time for two more.
James, Coach Spencer talked a lot about how excited he was with the speed of the defensive line, guys running 4.5s. Is that the way you're approaching the recruiting, or is that the way you're approaching development? Probably a combination of the two, I'd imagine.
I think it's a combination of the two. I think the other thing is, like anything in life, in any business, in any organization, you have to take on some risk. And I think Jason Oweh is a good example of that. I mean, there's probably guys that you could turn on their high school tape and they were further along development-wise, but they had some limitations athletically. And Jason's a guy that we thought was through the roof athletically, but was behind in the developmental process. And you got to get a mix of that kind of at every position. There's got to be guys that are going to come in more ready to play, and you got to know that there's other guys that are going to be more developmental, and you can't have too many of either at one position. You can't have too many developmental guys, and you can't have too many guys that are ready, more ready to play, but maybe are only going to get so much better. You kind of got to have a mix of all of that in your room, and you got to be aware, because if you get lopsided in either direction, you're going to have some challenges. So I think that's probably what you see at DN and on the defensive line. We're starting to get to the point where I think early on, to be honest with you, we had some misses on the D line. Guys that we thought we were going to get at the end and then didn't get, and then that put us in a hole where that's happening less and less. So year after year, our recruiting classes are getting more consistent, and you're not going to have a year like this year where we went into it knowing we're really thin at D tackle and at linebacker. Hopefully the more consistent we can be year after year will put us in less challenging situations like that.
Are there maybe one or two players in this freshman class, whether we've seen them or not, who you said, you guys have talked and said, we thought you were going to be good, but we didn't know maybe you'd be this good this early, you'd have this much of an impact right away?
Yeah, I would say Oweh. Oweh is a guy that probably is further ahead, than we thought. Jahan is probably the other guy that, we knew was talented, but I didn't realize the game mentally and physically would come this easy to him the way it does. They're probably the two guys that jump out, and then probably the third guy I would say is you never really expect to be able to play an O lineman or a D lineman as a freshman. So P.J. Mustipher playing as a true freshman at defensive tackle, where that's a grown man's game in there, and he's been able to be pretty good. And I think right now is really starting to kind of come into his own. Last week I thought was his best game by far.